The Pulse the Program series, I think, needs to take a trip to Athens. And that's what we're going to do exactly right now. And if you're not familiar with us right now, the Pulse the Program is an apparatus that we use to take a pulse of, one, the fan base, so how we're feeling in Athens, and then how we're feeling in that building as best we can tell within the locker room at Georgia, within the coaching staff at Georgia. What is the pulse there? Also important to note, because we got some comments on YouTube about this, program is spelled with a U. We'll leave it at that. So, last year for Georgia, made it 2 in a row. 2 national titles for Kirby and the boys. They ran it back. The first time they did it with Stetson Bennett in 2021, it was euphoria. The monkey was off the back. 40 years of pain and turmoil down the drain, and Georgia put that crown on, and it felt good, I'm sure. The second time they did it, you couldn't help but feel a little bit of a sense of relief if you're a Georgia fan, because you went wire to wire, you won the SEC, you were undefeated, you drew TCU, you were supposed to beat TCU, you did exactly what good teams do against teams they're supposed to beat, absolutely ragdolled them, and we were there in person to watch it. It wasn't pretty, but we did our best to put on a brave face and watch Georgia just bludgeon TCU. But now, they're going for a 3rd in a row. And the feeling around it for me is that 3rd in a row is now like the new standard. And standards are funny because you create them internally. Your process, your way you do things, your discipline. You do that internally, and then eventually that standard trickles out to the external, the masses, your fan base. And then they come to expect a certain thing of you. That's a standard. And the standard right now is winning national titles. And so when it comes to the pulse of the program within that fan base at Georgia, the pulse is we're still here. Because Georgia had waited 40 years as a fan base, 40 years, give or take, to talk that cash, to bark at people in public places, and to give them no rebuttal. Because that's exactly what you're doing right now if you're a Georgia fan. There's nothing they can say to y'all, man. There's nothing they can say. Back-to-back national champs, mic drop. We're still here. And that's how they feel now. They feel a lot like, yeah, we won it 1 time, we won it 2 times, and we're still here. There's no reason why we can't run it back for a 3rd time. There's no reason why we have to go anywhere with this streak we got rolling here. We still got Kirby Smart. We have arguably a more gifted player at quarterback. We got the best player in college football for a lot of people's money, Brock Bowers, on the scene. 3 starters on the offensive line are back. 70% of the production on defense is back. Michael Williams, an absolute freak show off the edge. Like, we're still here. We are still here, and you got to deal with us. There's no reason to be timid. And I have a picture from the national title game that is burned in my mind. It's 65-7. Carson Beck is in there in garbage time, and they're just sort of running out the clock. And it was evident at that point, as it was evident at many points throughout that game, that Georgia was about to win a national title. And the TCU faithful, God bless them, are starting to file out of SoFi Stadium, and there was a specific Georgia fan. We're probably in the 2nd level of the stadium, so we're up there a little bit. And he is just letting these TCU fans have it. And it felt like watching him talk to these TCU fans, it was kind of pent up within him, right? Like he had been waiting to let everybody know that Georgia was, once again, the national champs. And he's saying, enjoy that flight back to DFW, direct right back to Dallas Love from LAX. Like, he was letting them know that Georgia was that top dog. And I can't help but feel like that kind of encapsulates the feeling right now in that fan base in Athens. They're the top dog. They're still here, and they've been waiting a long time to be able to do that. But right now, they're at the top of the mountain. There's nothing anybody can say about it. I'm sure that feels good in Athens. So that's the pulse of the fan base. And the pulse of the program internally, I think, is very, very similar. But really quickly, make sure you subscribe. Appreciate y'all rocking with us. Make sure you're locked in here. We talk ball every day. We're live Tuesdays. We're live Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern. Don't miss a minute of it. No more time for missing shows, all right? College football season is here. The program's got to ride together now, so we appreciate y'all being locked in with us. Also listen on podcasts wherever you get them. Okay, now internally the pulse of the program is the exact same thing. We're still here. But it hits a little bit different if you're internally at Georgia, and here's why. Confetti drops. Georgia wins a 2nd in a row. No more Todd Monken. No more Stetson Bennett. No more Jalen Carter. Like, some key pieces from last year's team aren't there anymore. And that's not to say that Georgia is somehow being doubted. They're going to fall off a cliff and not be Georgia anymore. That's not what anybody's suggesting. But even so, you have some people in the national media that I think have valid questions about Georgia. because we haven't seen it. You don't know what Carson Beck's going to bring to the table. You can assume a little bit. We can imply a little bit based on him being on the roster at Georgia and his billing as a recruit as a 4-star player. But even so, there's a little bit of a question mark there. And Reese Davis came out and said, listen, I think Georgia's got a better roster top to bottom, but his number one preseason is Michigan. He knows more about Michigan. That's fine. Kirk Herbstreit, we sat down with him in a similar setting at the NIL Elite Series event, and he's like, listen, man, Georgia is phenomenal. I'm paraphrasing. He said Georgia is phenomenal, but I think right now Alabama is a little bit ahead of them. I'm not counting out Nick Saban. And so that's their opinion. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. But I think internally the feel at Georgia is the same thing. Hey, we're still here. You can have Michigan, you can have Alabama, you can have LSU. There's a lot of feeling around those teams, and that's totally fine. That is totally fine. But to the exact same degree, we're still here. Last time I checked, we got 2 national title trophies sitting on the mantle. So you got to deal with us now. You got to deal with us. You better know that if you want to win the crown, if you want to find a way to get somehow ahead of us to win the national title, you got to go through us. And we are still here. We're not going anywhere. And so nobody's peddling to Georgia. You're going to be 7-5, you're going to be 8-4. Like, I think that in itself was sort of a, fake narrative to begin with, to keep it a buck with y'all. But even so, man, there's still that chip on their shoulder, I think. I think there's still that edge of like, okay, y'all don't think we can go for a 3rd in a row? That's fine. Sit back, relax, and watch it happen. I think that's the feel internally. We are still here. Now, for Georgia, I think they're sort of wading into Bama-esque waters. And when I say that, we look at Nick Saban and what he's done over the course of his career. The pieces and the formula and the coaches, they've shifted around a little bit, right? It's Jacob Coker, it's Greg McElroy, Steve Sarkisian, it's Mac Jones. The pieces shift a little bit with what they have on that staff and on that roster and that quarterback. But consistently, year in and year out, Bama stays in that top tier of the SEC and in the college football landscape. Why? Because of their standards, because of the way they do things, and because of their head coach. Now for Kirby Smart, he's got 2 national titles. He hasn't done it without Stetson Bennett yet. Far be it from yours truly to predict that he won't. But to the exact same breath, pieces are changing. And so now I think for Bama and for Georgia, the reason that I see some parallels between them is now Georgia's kind of in that ascent mode, and I think they're probably peaking a little bit at, their ultimate goal, and they should because they've earned the right to do it. But how do you continue to throw fuel on the fire and throw logs on the fire that you're chasing a national title while you're already coming off 2 national titles? That's the piece to me. And that's what I'm curious to see, because that's what Bama's done for years. That's what great teams do. That's what great dynasties do, and I think that's what Georgia's after now. Now, the optimism for Georgia fans is you have some horsepower when it comes to that quarterback position. I didn't say a better quarterback. I didn't say you're going to win more football games with him at quarterback. Stetson Bennett, one more time for this broadcast, GOAT status in Athens, Georgia. Kirby Smart's words, not mine, but I don't disagree with him. But Carson Beck was a 4-star recruit. Stetson Bennett was a walk-on. Stetson Bennett developed a lot in college. I think Carson Beck has probably more God-given ability. So you maybe get excited about maybe being able to push the ball vertically a little bit more. And off-play action having a little bit more consistency from, the beginning of Carson Beck's career to the end of his career. It's a smaller sample size than Stetson Bennett because he played a long time. You hear the gist of what I'm saying. Carson Beck is a reason for some optimism that there won't be a drop-off when you look at what Georgia's going to do in 2023. But even so, man, the pulse at Georgia, fan base, and within that building is we're still here, and Georgia is still going to be a force, and you got to deal with them if you want to win a national title. Just ask Michigan having that beat Georgia, period. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.